1968, on a misty hill in Quang Tri, more than 6,000 U.S. Marines were isolated in the middle of a siege. Artillery fired day and night. Bunkers shook. The world watched with bated breath. And one question echoed endlessly. Is Khe Sanh America's Dien Bien Phu? Together we will find the answer in the battle that changed the course of the Vietnam War. Khe Sanh, 1968, America's Dien Bien Phu?
January 21st, 1968.
In the cold morning fog of the Quang Tri Mountains, a single blast shattered the silence. North Vietnamese artillery struck the main ammunition depot at Khe Sanh, a massive explosion rising like a dark column above the remote valley. The siege had begun. Khe Sanh, once just a small dot on the map, suddenly became the center of the world's attention. Every day, American television broadcast updates from this isolated battlefield, turning it into a suspenseful story watched by millions back home. And one alarming question kept repeating. Is this America's Dien Bien Phu? Over 6,000 U.S. Marines surrounded and cut off in the jungle hills, facing a much larger North Vietnamese force. Artillery shells rained down from the surrounding high ground, shaking bunkers and turning the red soil into clouds of dust and smoke. Fear crept in, not only in the trenches, but across the United States. But here's the twist no one expected. The United States would later claim victory, only to abandon Khe Sanh a few months later. If they won, why did they leave? What was the true objective of this brutal siege? And in the propaganda war between both sides, who actually achieved their goal? To understand the answers, we must look deeper into the fog of Khe Sanh, where strategy, fear, and global politics collided on a single mountaintop. Khe Sanh was more than a remote base in the mountains. It was a strategic crossroads in the Vietnam War. Just a few kilometers from the border with Laos, Khe Sanh stood near the Ho Chi Minh Trail, the lifeline that carried troops and supplies from North Vietnam into the south. Whoever controlled this high ground could disrupt or protect the entire flow of the war. For the United States, Khe Sanh offered three major advantages. One, a blocking point against North Vietnamese infiltration from Laos. Two, a launch pad for operations into the Western Highlands. Three, a chance to draw North Vietnamese forces into a massive set-piece battle where American firepower, especially B-52 bombers, could dominate. Some American commanders believed Khe Sanh could deliver a decisive blow. They hoped to repeat what the French had failed to do at Dien Bien Phu, but with overwhelming air support. On the other side, Bach Vietnam saw Khe Sanh as an opportunity. If they could pin down thousands of U.S. Marines here, American attention and reinforcements would be pulled away from cities and towns across South Vietnam. And something far larger was already in motion. A coordinated offensive that would soon erupt during the Lunar New Year, known today as the Tet Offensive. But before that moment arrived, the mountains around Khe Sanh would become a battlefield of trenches, tunnels, and relentless artillery. A siege designed to break American strength and morale. The Marines would soon learn what it meant to be completely surrounded. In late January 1968, the quiet hills around Khe Sanh turned into a deadly ring of fire. North Vietnamese artillery units secretly positioned on the surrounding ridges. Hill 8081, Hill 861, and Ko Rock Mountain had a commanding view of the entire base. From there, they unleashed constant and precise bombardment. The very first salvo struck the Marines' largest ammunition dump. The explosion was so massive that many believed the base had been overrun. Overnight, Khe Sanh became cut off from the world. Trenches were dug deeper, sandbags piled higher. Marines learned to live underground, in bunkers where light rarely entered. Food, water, medicine, everything now depended on aircraft braving enemy fire to land or drop supplies. Every landing attempt became a gamble. Pilots called the runway the most dangerous strip in the world. Meanwhile, up in the mist-shrouded hills, North Vietnamese troops kept tightening the circle. Sharpshooters targeted anything that moved. Patrols vanished in the jungle's silence. Rumors and fears spread among the defenders. Is this their Dien Bien Phu plan against us? At night, distant loudspeakers played unsettling messages. Marines at Khe Sanh, you cannot escape. The end is coming. But the Marines held on, waiting, fighting, and listening to the whistle of incoming shells, hour after hour. As the siege intensified, another shock was about to strike. Tanks would roll into the battlefield of Vietnam's south for the very first time, and the fight would soon spread beyond the barbed wire of Khe Sanh. As the siege tightened around Khe Sanh, the fighting spread to the outposts guarding the base, especially Ta Khon airstrip and the Special Forces camp at Lang Vay. Lang Vay lay just a few kilometers from Khe Sanh, defended by American Special Forces and local forces. For months, the camp stood as a barrier against troops coming from the Laos border. But on the night of February 7, 1968, something unexpected happened. Under the cover of darkness, North Vietnamese infantry pushed forward, accompanied by PT-76 amphibious tanks, sleek, low profile, and never before seen in combat in South Vietnam. The defenders were stunned. Anti-tank weapons were limited. Many Marines had believed tanks couldn't reach these rugged mountains. But the battlefield proved them wrong. Explosions ripped through bunkers as tanks broke the wire defenses. The battle turned into chaos. Close quarters fighting, flares lighting the sky, bullets and shrapnel everywhere. By sunrise, Lang Vay had fallen. Survivors fled toward Khe Sanh, bringing with them a chilling message. They have tanks, they're coming. Meanwhile, at Ta Khon, landing aircraft continued to take horrific risks. Supply planes approached low over the valley. Some burst into flames midair. Others skidded across the runway while shells rained from the hills. Each day, the circle grew smaller. Each hour, the artillery fire grew heavier. But the U.S. command had a plan. A massive response from the sky, unlike anything seen in the war so far. The Battle of Khe Sanh was about to reach its most destructive phase. With ground access nearly impossible, the United States turned the sky into its primary weapon. Under Operation Niagara, American aircraft unleashed one of the most intense bombardments in modern history. B-52 bombers roared overhead, dropping wave after wave of high-explosive bombs, sometimes just a few hundred meters from Marine positions. In only a few months, more than 100,000 tons of bombs fell on the hills of Khe Sanh, more than many entire campaigns of World War II. The earth shook, trees vanished, entire hilltops were carved open by the blasts. For U.S. commanders, the logic was clear. If the North Vietnamese wanted a decisive battle, America would give them one, from above. But while American aircraft dominated the skies, the North Vietnamese dug deeper into the mountains, using trenches, tunnels, and the thick jungle as their shield. Meanwhile, a second battle raged, not with bullets or bombs, but with messages and media. In Vietnam, loudspeakers, leaflets, and radio broadcasts claimed, "Khe Sanh will be your grave." In the United States, nightly news showed dramatic footage of the siege. Commentators warned of another Dien Bien Phu, fear spreading across families watching thousands of miles away. Each side declared the other was losing. But in the shadows, a far more important goal was already achieved. U.S. forces were pinned at Khe Sanh, just as the Tet Offensive exploded across South Vietnam. Both sides were winning and losing at the same time. Soon the Marines would break the siege, but with a conclusion that shocked the world. In early April 1968, the long wait finally ended. U.S. ground forces, including the 1st Air Cavalry Division, launched Operation Pegasus, advancing through rugged mountains to reopen the road to Khe Sanh. On April 8th, Marines from inside the base made contact with relief forces. The siege was broken. After months of bombardment, exhaustion, and fear, the defenders of Khe Sanh finally stood unencircled. The United States declared a clear tactical victory. But then, something unexpected happened. Just 3 months later, U.S. commander ordered Khe Sanh abandoned. Bunkers were destroyed, the runways blown up. The base, the symbol of American determination, left behind. To many watching from afar, the question was unavoidable. If this was a victory, why leave? Historians still debate the answer. For the U.S., protecting Khe Sanh was no longer worth the cost. For North Vietnam, tying down U.S. forces helped their objectives in the Tet Offensive. Both sides claimed success, and both sides suffered heavy losses. The Battle of Khe Sanh showed that victory in war isn't always measured by ground taken, or even by who remains standing. Sometimes victory is who changes the course of the conflict. And in that sense, Khe Sanh became a turning point, a moment when strategy, perception, and the world's eyes collided on a single mountaintop in Vietnam. The fog has lifted, but the debates over Khe Sanh continue, even today. Thank you for respecting history. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and write the bell so you don't miss any battles.